All right, hey, what's going on, guys? Hope you're all doing well. So now, as we start to bridge the understanding behind the entry cycle and the validation cycle, and starting to see them kind of together, and also at the same time seeing how the accumulation-based MBs interact with the momentum-based MBs of, let's say, a higher time frame, or how moves truly deliver, where they're either non-existent or building up clear accumulation-based MBs for us to take opportunities on, or delivering through momentum-based MBs, which then lead to failure or continuation, right? Now that we understand that, we can take it to the next level by continuing to see how the E and the V get bridged. So what I did is I provided a few examples here, some of which I personally traded, some of which I just found just to showcase the example, and I'll tell you guys which ones I personally traded because I don't mind showing it. And we're going to look at some of the examples of bridging the E and the V together, kind of looking at them side by side. So in this case here, in this scenario here, what we have is an E, which is going to be on the left, and a V, which is going to be, a V, which is going to be on the right. So usually what you'll see is this guy here will almost always be a multiple of or around 6x, with the exception where like a 30-second technically is a 3-minute, but in this case you can see I'm using a 5-minute for the V, and that's what I personally use to actually trade this exact market. So here's a market I traded, and once again what you're going to see is the on a V time frame, this is assuming the V, the market that is already basically delivering, one that has maybe already undergone accumulation and is now kind of moving higher through, as you can see here, momentum-based MBs higher and higher and higher. Those are the stepping stones. These momentum-based MBs here are the stepping stones for creating lower time frame based MB accumulations, right? So here's where you have the cycle delivery, you have your flushes, you have your startup of double MBs. Those double MBs lead to moves, those lead to new flushes, that lead to new stage ones, that lead to new double MB buildups, that lead to entries, that lead to new flushes, that lead to new double MB buildups, that lead to beautiful entries. Now, again, what I want you to see, even as we do this is, and the reason I'm including this is because I want to show you that even though prices might work or do the right thing or do what you expect, it doesn't mean necessarily that you're making money on the move or that you're in the move, right? You can see from my own personal trading, this is a beautiful example of the market that did work, moved the way it should on the E and the V, and I wasn't able to capitalize on it because, well, the trades I took did not end up being the ones that delivered. That's perfectly fine. But this is your first bridging of the gap, right? What you have is a V time frame, which is going through this general fractal stage momentum-based MB along the rising averages, right? So what you have, and this is what you're going to learn to scan for when you start using the tools that are available to you here, right? What you're seeing is a market that is moving higher and creating a momentum-based MB or a fractal stage 1 into a new stage 2 along the rising averages, and creating basically 1, 2, 3-ish, 4-ish bases. I thought this was actually 4 here, which is why I traded it, and gives you opportunity on a lower time frame to start finding and seeing those accumulation-based MBs that could act as opportunities if that's what you're trading, right? So again, this is going directly into this right here, which is that we're seeing this happen on the validation time frame, and as we see this happen on a validation time frame, a lower time frame, or our entry time frame, literally shows us that full market cycle happening, right? Now, excuse me if my voice is a little crazy or my eyes are watering. I'm a little bit sick, but education cannot wait. Now, here's another example. Again, we're just going to do a very quick example so you can get really used to seeing it so you can start doing it on your own. But here's another trade that I personally traded. This was during the same week as this trade here. This was on, I believe, Thursday, and this one was on Friday. All of these were actually on Friday. And what you'll see is from an entry time frame cycle, because again, you can start on the entry or the V because you start to marry them together and make sure that they all line up, right? And what we're also doing, hopefully, as you start seeing this, is we started with a very basic example of a market where, as you all know, we were kind of going bullish and bearish and switching it around and understanding how the cycle can be swapped around. And as we get better and better at this, and as you learn more about the E and the V and overall entry opportunities, what you're also going to see is that the kind of entries I personally look to trade and the kind of markets I personally tend to trade become cleaner and cleaner in regards to what is the direction on that market. All I mean by this is when you see me trading something in any given week, the odds of me switching up my bias or going from long to short or changing my changing my entry from being someone on the long side to someone on the short side never happens. This is because I've built out a system for myself and tools for myself and scans for myself that always lead me to basically trade in the direction that is most clearest or to wait on the sidelines. So even though the example videos that started to bring forth the thought process behind the E and the V working together, we're going to take that to the next step and basically build on that by showing you how to find literally the markets that are extremely clear in one given direction, right? So that's why you won't see me randomly like taking longs here, then shorts here, and then longs here, and then shorts here and shorts here. Even though those kind of things might and can work for someone, I personally don't like having to swap consistently, trying to guess between if I'm in an accumulation or distribution, if I'm moving to this side or this side. So instead, what I've done is I've created an opportunity for myself, or I trade the opportunities for myself that are very clearly knit in one direction. And it's very hard to get it on the opposite unless the market becomes no longer clear. Building further on the thing that I want you to basically see over and over and over again and get used to, which is that we are learning to know where the competent operator very likely wants to move the market. And as a result, that's all we follow until it's no longer clear. So that is why, as we continue, as we progress through examples, you're going to see examples distilled to a system that makes me the most money, makes the most sense for me, and something that you can personally do for yourself as you potentially run into snags or problems like trading both sides of the market at all times or getting caught in a lot of chop, right? What I try to do is I try to find these very clear conditions in the market that are clear for me to trade and that only give me opportunity to one side of the market. So if I look at this example like we just did, you saw the E and the V complement each other very well. Similarly, right here, the trades that you're looking at right now, you can see the same thing is present. The V itself is already so complementary to one side that I either take trades in that direction or the market fails, right? Fails and goes into chop that is no longer worth trading for me, and I can simply walk away. But nonetheless, here's another bridging the gap between the E and the V, where once again, on the V, what you're seeing is price has kind of proven itself, maybe broken down, and maybe went for an overall cycle as a reaccumulation here, started making accumulation-based MBs, which I tend to stay away from sometimes if I'm trading the E. And then as it moves higher and starts putting in maybe a double accumulation-based MB or a momentum MB, right? Because this could be a momentum MB right here. That's where I'm stepping down. And that's exactly where I'm trading the full cycle, where I'm seeing a major flush, followed by a stage one, followed by the stage two, followed by a flush that leads to the MBs or demand zone formations that lead to new entries that then go to make a potential run or a bigger stage two that then lead to new flushes, MB1, FFMB2 or momentum MB, and they go and they flush and make an MB1, MB2 that I personally traded, and then nothing happened, came down. Once again, MB1, MB2, which I personally traded, and then took a loss on, right? So what you're seeing is that the exact things you're learning and the exact things you've seen are being applied. But now we're, on one hand, showing you the bridge between the E and the V, and on another, stepping ourselves up a level in terms of what I'm personally doing, which is looking for extreme clarity in a direction. Because the reality is, if I have 8,000 markets to choose from, 8,000 markets to trade, and every single one of them, I'm willing to take stuff that isn't extremely clear to me, well, that's going to mean that my results might become a little bit more randomized. I might take a little bit more chop losses. I might take more losses on either direction. I might get the direction wrong more often versus what you're learning and seeing right now, which is the refinement for moving your understanding of E and V to the kind of next step, which is we can take our E and V and then we can apply it to very, very clear one-sided markets as they begin to deliver. And right now, we're still focused on just the E and the V, but here's another bridge between that gap where, once again, what we're looking for is basically this thing on repeat. The E is going through the cycle that we're willing to trade. The V is going through its own cycle, which is basically the momentum MB multiple bases higher, right? Or fractal stages higher. So you might hear me refer to these pauses like this pause 1, this pause 2, this pause 3, this pause 4. You might refer to me. You might hear me refer to these specific pauses as stages because that's what they are. They're fractal stages. You might hear me say bases just because they're kind of bases. They're just basing, right? Price goes, it bases, it goes, right? Stage 1, stage 2, stage 1, stage 2. Stage 1 is simply what we could refer to as a base. So if you ever hear me refer to basing, that's basically what I'm discussing, right? But for the most part, you just have fractal deliveries of stage ones into stage twos, stage ones into stage twos, stage ones into stage twos. And that's what you're going to generally see on the momentum-based, on the validation-based time frame, right? In context to sometimes you'll have the full cycle playing out in the sense that, price might go, break down and flush out, and then start this reaccumulation, which might be like, a few MBs here, and then start a move. That's kind of what happened on this duo trade right here that I took, right? Where you had this move happen, price then broke down for a flush, started building those accumulation-based MBs, and then started building the momentum-based MBs that acted as opportunities on a lower time frame to trade, which I tried to trade and kept trying to trade until it just started to fail multiple times, at which point I got to walk away. And nonetheless, it was a beautiful, beautiful trading day. Here's another bridge between the E and the V, where the E is going through its overall full cycle, and the accumulation-based MBs are the ones that I'm mainly focused on executing, and they start building themselves, once again, just at or around those 10 and 20s for the MB1, and then MB2, and I look to trade that. And then the V, at the same time, is oftentimes creating the momentum MBs above rising averages, higher than the averages, moving higher with the averages, and then giving you those opportunities inside of there to trade, okay? Here's another. This is a trade I personally traded as well, and I think I just discussed this with you guys in the last video, and I'm still in this actually currently, and you can see from the time of entry, so again, 15-minute in this case, X is my E, so again, showcasing the same thing you guys learned about earlier, which is that the time frame itself doesn't matter. What matters is your understanding of the E and the V and the C. In this case, the E and the V. And understanding that time frames don't specifically do anything special other than give you an opportunity on a different timeline than what a lower time frame or higher time frame E might do for you. And further clarifying the thing that I said over and over again, which is it doesn't matter what market or time frame you're trading. What matters is the story behind the assets you're trading, right? So as we look here, I think I spoke about this exact trade with you guys in the last few portal videos. And at the moment, if we just move over to it, you can see this trade is doing absolutely phenomenally. This is where it left off since that time of the recording of that video, right around here. And now we just took off, had a crazy time. I took another partial here. Now I have the rest just running for hopefully a continuation of this move. So who knows? Maybe as we look at this example in the future again, it will be doing a lot better. And again, we speak about these in the webinars too, so make sure you're showing up to the webinars. Now, once again, given that my entry time frame is a 15-minute, what we're going to see is that if we simply look at a 6x multiple, that puts us at around 90 minutes. So very simply, before I even show you the 90-minute chart, which is going to be this one right here, you should already generally know what to expect given the fact and given what I've shown you over and over again for the marriage of this, or the bridging of the entry timeframe cycle and the validation timeframe cycle. And very simply, right, as we look at this, you have what I would probably label as a major flush, a stage one into a stage two, a flush or a major flush, just depending on how you want to view this, into a stage one, into a stage two, into a flush, into the creation of MBs. So once again, exact same thing as you guys have seen before, MB1 followed by MB2, which in this case was the MB I personally traded. That's where I entered. Once again, moved my stop to break even as this thing started to move higher. And you guys saw that now it's somewhere up here, which is phenomenal. That's exactly what we want to do in the market. But now, if we look at and consider this entry, what we should know, given that we're looking at the accumulation-based MBs that started to set up at or around the flush into that stage one, at the 10 and 20, after the delivery of a major flush into a flush, basically the cycle of the entry, we know that as I move this to the 90-minute, what we should see, well, as I move this up to the 90-minute, what we should see is price, for the most part, having made some kind of push and paused on or at or around or just above the 10 and 20, because we know that these flushes, as part of the characteristics of momentum-based MBs, because that's what we're trading off of the validation timeframe, basically, right? So what we're learning is that we're using the momentum continuation-based MBs of the validation timeframe to find the cycle accumulation-based MBs of the entry timeframe, right? So given that understanding, we should know that if we move to the 90-minute, and based on the characteristic, we know that this will be the creation of likely a momentum-based MB or a higher up accumulation-based MB, because they can sometimes correspond, and sometimes it makes sense to watch something, and we'll look at examples like that in the future, and this is kind of like one. But for the most part, what we'll see a momentum-based MB forming like this at or just above the 10 and 20, higher moving, And that's where this trade takes place. And if I go ahead and move this to the 90-minute, which is right here, that's exactly what you'll see. Price pushes up, right? Already proving that the move is there, that the COMSAT operator is behind the move. Price then pauses. This is now creating a momentum-based MB, where again, you're expecting this to get ran. Maybe it comes back down, or maybe it just keeps running. We don't know how that's necessarily going to go, right? Maybe it goes through more momentum-based MBs and then fails down later, which is why you saw me draw this out a while back. And as you can see here, above the 1020, price flushes down into the 1020, and primarily, if we were using a 5, under the 5. So again, looking back at this exact example and setting the Mentafex averages to a 15-minute and a 90-minute, which I don't have access to, so we'll just do it for a 60-minute. And if I have them all on, what you'll see before I even do it is that this flush here is going to come to or under the 5, 10, 20 of the higher. So if I go ahead and get rid of this and turn this on, that's exactly what you see. You see price start off, and then you see it flush down into the 5, 10, 20 as a characteristic of the accumulation-based MB for an entry time frame, and as a characteristic for a continuation-based MB, just like that, of a validation time frame. Right, and again, this is referencing directly. This is why we kind of worked through that and I walked you through it. This is referencing exactly this right here, right? The accumulation-based MBs will come from a deeper flush, usually just below the 10 or 20 EMA on the entry time frame, or 5, 10/20 EMA on the validation time frame, which is what you're seeing there. You're seeing that you see that corresponding price action. You see how the E and the V are working together to create that overall move, and as a result, it's falling into the characteristics of what we expect. And as things fall into the characteristics of the move, of what we expect, of the cycle of what we expect, and of the validation of what we expect, while also putting us on one side of the market, well, you should all be seeing right now, as you're learning and as you're getting through this, how we get to this part or to this point of knowing, what the COMSAT operator wants to do next. Because again, when everything starts to align at a larger level and everything starts making sense at that level, then of course, the trades you're taking start to make sense in terms of, okay, if money's behind this, this is what it's going to do. And that's what you see right here. All right, the money comes in behind it. That's the momentum-based MB being formed off the validation time frame. And as we move into the lower, the entry-based time frame, we see that act as a beautiful, beautiful flush. And that flush leads to the creation of those double MBs, which leads to the entries. Now, what I've also done is I've looked at this area on the left here. So you can see this area here just to showcase this. I did not trade any of this, but I wanted to showcase it because you have the same thing. If you pay attention to what's going on here, you kind of have this flush out. Maybe you have this buildup of accumulation MBs here. But for the most part, right, momentum-based MB or accumulation-based MB, momentum-based MB, momentum-based MB, momentum-based MB, momentum-based MB, momentum-based MB. If we try to somehow, or to the best of our ability, count the stages, the fractals, the MBs that are happening, and especially the ones that are happening further apart from each other, I would say you have something along the lines of this. Maybe 1, 2, maybe this is still part of 2, or you could say this is 3, and this acts as 3 with it, right? So either you go 2, 2, 3, or 2, 3, 3, because these are kind of acting together, right? 1, 2, 3, this is kind of 4, this is kind of 4 as part of that, and then you extend. Like, yes, at that point, and you guys will learn this, markets can keep going and go crazy and stuff, but for the most part, almost every single move in the market, based on the way that it actually functions and the way that money comes in, you will generally go, if the cycle is going to fully deliver, through 4-ish or so bases or fractal stages like so, right? Fractal 1, stage 2, fractal 2, stage 2, fractal 3, stage 2, fractal 3 or 4, stage 2, fractal 3 or 4 or extension, right? So again, stage 1, stage 2, stage 1, stage 2, fractally seen, and as a part of the momentum-based MBs. And these parts here, again, if we zoomed in on the entry time frame, if we step down a multiple of around 6x lower, we should see what? We should see the overall delivery of the cycle through flushes and through MB creations. Now, that doesn't mean we're going to get entries, but that's what we should see. And doesn't mean we're going to make money, but that's what we should see. So if we go inside of that, this is that action inside of that, you guys should be able to play that same game that we've played over and over and over again, right? A major flush leads to some kind of stage 2. This is still under that area. So this right here is still under this area right here, which you might still not want to use as an entry. So maybe we'll wait till the next move back. Right, so it starts and then makes that move back. And then, this becomes that stage 1 into stage 2 into this flush, which then creates MBs. But again, these are all happening, if you notice, during hours that are closed, or at least that I don't personally trade during. So these are closed market hours. The whites are the open. Is on a 15-minute chart on a stock, and that is why that's the case. And you can see as price opens up, we get this flush. You get this kind of MB1, MB2 accumulation, and this is actually an entry I would personally take. I'd be more than happy to take this as an entry with my stop probably somewhere here. And this probably would have put me at a loss, I'm assuming, or a break even. This is just, this just depends on the person, but might have been a loss. Nonetheless, the move then sustains itself, goes into a stage 2, starts the next session with a flush, MB1, kind of a large MB2, so maybe a momentum MB. I'd probably skip this one completely. Next day, right, goes through another flush, MB1, FFMB2 that's acting like basically as a FFMB2 that's acting as a very, very nice FMB because of just this candle and this candle put together. So this right here could be a viable entry. I probably would have skipped it unless I was really closely watching this market, but entry, stop, and again, you have the same rules met, and I believe, yeah, that one goes really beautifully. Then it starts goes through another flush, MB1, not really an MB2, just an FFFMB2, FFMB2 that I would never have traded. Price goes, flushes out again, then starts a move, and this starts, when this opens up, it's already in momentum-based MB, so I'd skip it. It goes, and then it becomes extended based on the fact that our validation time frame had undergone around 4 of those stages, has already made a very large move, and this might have been one of those moves that I maybe missed, unless, right, for some reason, I personally would have traded it somewhere here. Now, again, this is not a move I traded at all. I wasn't even watching this market at the time of it delivering, but I thought I would add this in to show you that, again, there's opportunities everywhere. And then it just turned out to be the case that this is the opportunity I traded. And that's the one that happened after all this nonsense. Price went through another flush on the validation time frame here. Past that, it started making these accumulation MBs, maybe momentum-based MB, came back down, accumulation-based MB, started a move. And once again, as that move starts and the momentum MB start getting put in through the momentum, prices moving higher with the averages, I was more than happy to start watching it. And that is exactly where I got positioned. And since that position, as we all see now, this thing has been just going beautifully, right? You had, at the time of making even this photo, price was right here. And now we're almost triple that, almost double where it was, which is phenomenal. That's what we're looking for as traders. Okay. And again, this is that bridging of the gap. Let's look at another example of bridging the gap. Here's an example on a 65-minute, the same example we've used multiple times before now, but now with the added perspective of what you have of the bridging of the E and the V. 65-minute, which means a 6x multiple is around 5 hours or 6 hours, which puts us around a day based on this, because it's a stock here in this case. So all we do is we go ahead and take a look at the daily, and you have the same thing. This is where that trade was. This is one of my best trades of this year, 2024, at the time of making this video. And what happened is you got this kind of flush on the validation time frame. It started making the accumulation-based MBs, accumulation-based MB, or accumulation-based MB, or momentum-based MB. But by the time you started making that move up and over the averages very clearly, and that started putting in this fractal stage 1 into what we would expect to be a stage 2, that became that momentum-based MB that I was willing to enter or look at as this began to pull back, and I wanted to see this thing trade higher. And that's exactly where my trade came from. It was right here. And this is the exact example we've looked at together multiple times now, right? Major flush, stage 1, stage 2, kind of a flush, kind of started building up those MBs here, that then goes through a new flush, starts building those MBs up, flushes. So this all acts as one flush. Now, at the time of making the initial photos, I wasn't using these off-market hours. So that's just preference based on the timeframes you use. You can turn these off or on to see them or not. However, the trade itself was this guy right here, right? We had that MB1, MB2, and this was an opportunity that's perfectly valid through there. And then we had the flush into MB1, into MB2, and this is actually the trade I believe I personally traded. So I can go and find it right now just to double check that for all of you. And what I'll do is I'll go in here and I'll turn off the extended hours because this is on a stock. And if I move over to the 65-minute and to the left of price, here we are, right? There we are. So yeah, that entry came from specifically the flush into MB1, MB2, and the entry came from exactly right here. So if we take a look at this, right, that entry was around that 38.7. So around that 38.7. Yep, so right around there as an entry. But I think the entry was here because of how the market hours work. I think it was like MB1, MB2. Again, this is preference to how you set up your charts. But nonetheless, the move is there and it looks the exact same way. Flushes into the double MB, accumulation MBs within the bridging the gap of the validation timeframes, momentum-based MB, and price goes. Absolutely beautiful. Here's an example. So that's another one that I personally traded and I made, I did very well on that one. Here's one I have not traded at all whatsoever. I don't think ever in my life. And what I've done is I just brought up something that is just random, right? I just brought up corn futures because again, what I want you to understand is that it's not about the market. It's about the actual story of the market you're trading and then making sure that story aligns for a good setup. All right. So what we have here is I use a 2 hour as my E, which simply puts us around a daily for the V. Okay, because 2 hour times 6 is around 12 hours. So 12 hours you can use a you can use a daily. You could even use a 2-day. It doesn't matter. All valid. And as we look here, right on the daily, you're going to see the same blueprint. And I kind of drew it out. Right, you have this initial move, and this could be the momentum MB like 1. So if you count it, you can go kind of like 1, maybe 2, maybe this is 3 or 2, 4, and then it extends. It reaccumulates, and it kind of goes through this 1. 2, but then it kind of pauses and pauses and pauses, and then it takes off, and it kind of goes through this like 1, 2, 3, and then it falls off, and then it takes off and goes through this 1, 2, 3, 4, tops out, and then fucks off and fails. Right now, again, what we should understand is that if we go inside of these areas here, of the areas that started to create that kind of clear momentum-based MBs, or started to move higher, or started to prove that it was moving higher in an overall cycle, but moving higher with the averages. As we go inside of these on the entry time frame, what should we see? We should see the same cycle with the same accumulation-based MBs, double MBs, that started to create moves on this market. What I did is I have two of these side by side because one shows us someplace here, I think. This one shows us this area here. But if we go inside it, that's exactly what you're going to see. Like you can almost see the photo as we look at this in comparison to the other markets we've already looked at together, right? Where you can literally for yourself see major flush, stage 1, stage 2, flush, MB based entries, move, flush, MB based entries, move, flush, move, flush. In this case, the entry itself would hold. That entry would start a crazy, crazy move, flush, potential MB based entries based on who you are and how you trade, but I don't know if you would have traded that. Takes off, flush, MB, MB, moves, break even, MB, MB. If you end up trading that, takes off, comes back again, MB, double MB, takes off, and off you go for a nice little move. Similarly, before that, so this entire area here was basically this area here. And then if we look at this guy here, that's looking at basically, I believe, this area down here from what I think, just looking at that, right? So again, you have the same thing. You have that major flush into what could be a stage 2 here or a stage 2 here. This is just preference, but I'd probably say it's this one. Into a flush into MB1, MB2, which starts a beautiful move that once again never returns to entry, and that just takes off. Starts a move, goes through a flush, MB1, MB2, flushes deeper, MB1, MB2, kind of flushes back down, MB1, MB2, a little bit harder, but these are opportunities, and this is how opportunities are presented. Now, you might not necessarily trade all of these because at the time of them happening, so if we take a look at this, at the time of them happening, prices were like right here. Right, so maybe you skip it because of that and you wait a little bit and then you start trading it around here and you might catch this move. And great, if you do, then you do. But sometimes you won't. Right, in this case, price takes off, then reflushes, and at that point, we're right here on the move. Right, and from there, you can flush into that 10, 20, or just 2. And as you start looking at these areas inside of here, what are you going to see? Well, you're going to see those accumulation-based MBs build up. And just to pinpoint this, right, if you had been watching this, where's number 3? Yeah, right here, right? If you were watching this, it might be the case that you started to look for entry somewhere here as well, right? Because if you did, what that would mean is that the price action at the time might have been where? Actually, I think just looking at this, that this was the 3 move right here. right here, likely. I can't tell 100% just by looking at these side by side, super zoomed out. But yeah, it does appear to be that way. Yeah, so that 3 move was actually right here. And then what you have, once again, is kind of this stage 2, stage 1, through that flush out. Then you start building those MBs again, right? Kind of like this MB1, MB2. That might be a break even, breaks down. MB1, nothing to do, flushes out again. MB1, MB2, or MB1, FF MB2, or MB1, FF MB2. So again, you can see there's multiple stackings of double MBs here, however you look at it. And those led to, once again, a beautiful entry that in this case held on, and you get to trade your overall cycle higher beautifully, right? And then if you don't, then you have another flush, MB1, MB2, or MB1, MB2, or MB1, FF MB2, just depending on how you want to trade this. So probably an entry somewhere here. Again, same exact thing. So even if you miss an entry, you can see on markets that do deliver and continue to deliver and are currently within a validation timeframe that are not super extended or are still in the act of creating those bases and moving higher and doing so clearly, well, you're going to get multiple opportunities to make money on that market, to get behind the market, and then to hopefully play that out for a large swing. Now, I personally, just looking at this, right, just because I get involved, let's say here, which I might have, right, like here, does not mean I'm going to be in the move for this, right? It's usually not the case. I might get stopped out and then get back in. That's perfectly fine, right? We started our understanding here within the portal of knowing what creates moves. How big can moves be? How much, can they run for a shit ton? And we all know the answer is yes. But at the same time, as we get better and better at understanding ourselves, our own systems, we're going to learn that just hoping for the big move of all time to happen every single time we trade is not a good way to go about it. Instead, the best way is to build a solid bit of risk management that allows us to get in, stay in good bulks of the move, get out, and potentially get back in. Because once we start understanding that opportunities can present themselves multiple times in a good market, right? Multiple times, multiple times, multiple times. Multiple times, multiple times, multiple times, multiple times. Once we understand that the opportunities in the market can be presented multiple times, we no longer sit there worrying that we're missing a move. Instead, we look for the very good moves, right? And that's exactly what I kind of wanted to show you here, which is that, listen, I could have missed a lot of these moves and it wouldn't necessarily change in a huge way how much I make in a given year, in my average RR or whatever. All that matters is that I'm actually executing these rules when they end up showing up, right? That's really it. And missing is not a big deal because more moves will come. You'll be surprised by how many of these moves become available every single day based on what you're watching or the timeframes that you want to personally trade. And again, this is just a quick little synopsis, exemplar video of literally bridging that E and the V and showing how they work together between the momentum-based MBs and the accumulation-based MBs to create opportunity over and over and over again. And also to highlight this idea of 4 stages or 4 fractal stages, generally somewhat spaced apart. It doesn't always have to be super spaced apart, but somewhat spaced apart for the delivery of a given market, to the point where you might want to take a step back because there might be extension. So this is the bridging of the E and the V, okay? And some examples that go along with that. Now we're going to go a little bit deeper into them and talk about entry specifically. Let's do it.